Hey friends, we've been looking at the Psalms and a lot of other things come in when you do that, right? Something that occurred to me is that it would be really instructive to talk to our friends in the Jewish community. We treasure our long relationship with the Jewish community, especially Temple Israel. When Rabbi Murray Esrin was here, and then now with Rabbi Michael Wolk. You know, Jews had the Psalms way before the Christians did, and have had them longer. So I went to Temple Israel and talked to Rabbi Wolk and also their cantor, Shira Lissick, who is, Rabbi Wolk is amazing. Shira Lissick has a great singing voice and a lot of wisdom on just how Jews. Hey friends, we've been looking at the Psalms and a lot of other things come in when you do that, right? Something that occurred to me is that it would be really instructive to talk to our friends in the Jewish community. We treasure our long relationship with the Jewish community, especially Temple Israel. When Rabbi Murray Esrin was here, and then now with Rabbi Michael Wolk. You know, Jews had the Psalms way before the Christians did, and have had them longer. So I went to Temple Israel and talked to Rabbi Wolk and also their cantor, Shira Lissick, who is, Rabbi Wolk is amazing. Shira Lissick has a great singing voice and a lot of wisdom on just how Jews sing psalms, chant them, and so on. I think you will really love this conversation with Rabbi Wolk and cantor Lissick.
Hey, as we continue our series on the Psalms, I am visiting right now in Temple Israel out on Providence Road. I'm with my relatively new friends, Rabbi Michael Wolk and cantor Shira Lissick. And thank you for talking to us about Psalms. Now, Michael, you've been on our Bible study before, and we appreciate that. Shira, you're new to us, so you're the cantor here. Tell folks what a cantor is.
So thank you so much. It's really fun to be able to get to know you better and to get to know your community. And thank you so much for coming to Temple Israel to talk with us.
Love being here.
A lot of people ask that question. What is a cantor? So my short, funny answer is a cantor is a singing rabbi. Just that kind of sums it up. But that is sort of what it is. A clergy person whose language is music, and using, we take care of all of the music in a synagogue, from chanting to musical settings. That's sort of our domain, music in the synagogue. I
know Cantor Rothvarg had been here for many, many years, and I came to, I believe it was the Kristallnacht service, and I was way in the back because it was packed, and I heard this voice from the front. I thought, they have a new cantor, and you have a beautiful singing voice. So,
thank you so much.
Yeah. So tell us about Psalms in Jewish worship and piety.
Sure. Well, my answer to your first question is, when you say, what's a cantor? I said, that is a cantor. What do I think of a cantor now?
Thank you.
The book of Psalms, 150 chapters of it, that traditionally we attribute to King David, although I know scholars question that. Do you generally say it's by King David also?
I was trained in academic psalm scholarship that doubted the titles, although my professor wondered if some of them couldn't be attributed to David. David certainly started a stream of tradition. I did my doctoral dissertation on Psalm 90, which is attributed to Moses, of course. There are a few exceptions.
So yes, generally we say they're attributed to David, and we have a number of different uses for Psalms in our prayer book. We actually include a fair number of them each and every day. Now, I'll tell you that I'm terrible at remembering the numbers of Psalms. I just know them in Hebrew, actually. But
the numbering can be a little
bit different also. But we have a section of our prayer book called in Hebrew Psukei de Zimra, verses of song, and it's each morning, and it starts. It's the beginning of the service. The idea, before we get to the formal morning service, we have this introductory section that we chant. In some places we'll do it kind of on their own, each person praying to themselves, but when we were in services together, back when that was a thing, that was part of the prayer each morning. These opening Psalms, and it included the last five chapters of the books of Psalms. Actually, sorry, 6 chapters of the book of Psalms, starting with the psalm we call Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha, Psalm 145. Happy are they who dwell in your house, although now I translate it as happy are they who stay home.
Happy are they who view us online. And these are in Hebrew? You do it in Hebrew or in English?
Yeah.
We do them in Hebrew, and although our prayer book has English translations, and that's a part of the service that it has its own nusach, it has its own chant, but it's kind of very low key. Like if you were davening, leading services in the morning, the daily minyan, how might you do one of the psalms, like nusach?
A daily minyan. So we do modes for every time of day or time of year. So the chants are really different. So a weekday is kind of just a plain old, I'm not even thinking of what weekday would be like.
So when you say chant, what do you say more about that?
So different than songs. So songs. So we have a certain system. So in the way beginning, prayer was thought of something that could be spontaneous. But the rabbis realized that sometimes when you want to talk to God, you're at a loss for words, sort of like an artist about to paint a painting. A white canvas is very intimidating. And so that's where the Psalms kind of came in. The rabbis started putting things together. And so we have this Psuke de Zimra that has like all of these Psalms that we kind of just get through them. And then people like me who love music will try to highlight a psalm with more music. But like the Nusach, which I do kind of feel like I need the Siddur to like get me into it, but if we were just like whatever it is. So like we have like Birchot HaShachar, it's just the weekday is just a very basic, not that fancy chant.
But it's sung.
It is sung, but we have an awful lot to get through, a lot of text to get through, so we usually just want an hour. So we're all about getting it done,
Here's a mashrei.
Oh, we've got Ashe. Right, so we would just do...
Show that, where she can see it on the...
Oh, okay. So, this is Ashe. It's a good example, actually. Because Ashe, depending on when I'm doing it, I'll put different melodies to it.
Do people know the melody so they can join in, or?
Well, most of the time, but that is a sticking point sometimes. But so Ashrei, if it was just weekday, would be Asher Shebetecha Yalucha Selah, and people would mostly just chant it to themselves. And then at the end, we would just basically
mumble our way through.
If I were on a Saturday afternoon, a Shabbat afternoon, there's a special nusach, we call it a special chant just for that. And that goes, Ashrei Oshivitecha Oyalucha Selah. And it's just for that. If I was teaching my students in Hebrew school, I would want to create a melody that brings the text to life for them. So because it's happy are those who dwell in your house, they will sing your praises forever. We want it to be a happy melody. So to those kids, we usually sing, Ashrei, Ashrei B'techa, Yalelucha Selah. And then a lot of our congregants know a more traditional back and forth.
Antiphonal?
Antiphonal, where I'll sing one, or the leader will sing one phrase, and then the congregation sings the other.
Call and response.
And that's more like, Ashrei Ashrei B'techa, Od Yalucha Selah. And it goes back and forth, until you get to the end.
But then some of the psalms are sadder, like, my God, why have you forsaken me? Or by the waters of Babylon, we hung up our lyres. You have different tunes for those that are more somber.
We do.
I'm guessing.
It's we actually don't focus too often on the sad psalms in our regular liturgy. Somber, I think of. Psalm 23, obviously very well-known psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. That one I know the number for.
But on that road Babel that you're talking about, that is on one of our saddest days of the year is when we sing that. So that's in the summer, weirdly. On Tisha B'Av, we'll sing that. But most of the Siddur that has the psalms that we use most is trying to focus on the joy of life, a lot of it, and on what did you feel?
I think we focus on Psalm 150 pretty heavily at the beginning of services. That's the end of that introductory Psuke de Zimra section, and you have I think I've heard this really beautiful new melody that you introduced at the beginning of Shabbat morning services.
Yes.
Sometimes.
So we have a lot of fun with Hallelujah because it's all about all the instruments in the temple that they use to praise God. That we can use the drums and all the different sort of biblical instruments. And so there was one just written recently in my old synagogue, and maybe one day here at Temple Israel. We had a resident composer, and he would write new melodies. And so this was. Hallelujah, Bekocho, Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Birki Yahuzo, Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Burata, Hallelujah, Roguzo, Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. And then, Kol Hanshama, every soul should sing. Kol Hanshama, Tehalaya, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. So that's brand new. That was written maybe 2 years ago. But the one that our congregation actually loves, who doesn't love Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah? So sometimes we even take melodies that are in the air and set it. So we'll do, Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah. So it would be Hallelujah, Bekocho, Hallelujah, Birki Yahuzo, Hallelujah, Burota, Hallelujah, Roguzo, Hallelujah, Betika Shukai, Hallelujah, Nevel, Bechinor, Hallelujah. So everybody loves that. And then there's other ones that we consider anyway.
Yeah, what I was thinking about was, we said somber. Psalm 23, we did it yesterday at the memorial service last week. There's this very traditional melody that we use at Suda Shlishi, third meal on Shabbat, but we have this beautiful melody by Gerald Cohen, if I'm not mistaken.
For Psalm 23.
For Psalm 23 that people really respond to.
It is a beautiful melody for Psalm 23. Let me recall it for a moment.
We, by the way, at our funerals, almost all of them, we recite the 23rd Psalm together, the entire congregation out loud. Most people know it from memory, and I can see it just means so much. It just speaks to people. Anyway.
To your point, I have found that it's an amazing bridge, an interfaith bridge for us. Over and over again, if we've had any kind of interfaith memorials or services, and I've sung that, or even if I've been invited to a church to sing something for a service, when I start with people, it is such a connector for our faiths because it is so popular all around. And then for people to hear it in Hebrew, they get really excited about that. So I have found that has been an incredible bridge.
So how does it go?
So the one that I like most is Adonai Rohi Lo Echsar
That's the one.
That's the one.
That's the one.
But there are, you probably have Esai I lift my eyes, where do I find my help?
That's 121 for us.
121 is also very popular for us for funerals, and there's
for us as well.
Yeah, there's some really gorgeous, yearnful melodies for that.
We do that at the graveside, Psalm 121.
Yes,
I
we
lift
do
up my
too.
eyes to the hills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, all of our funerals are graveside, so we are doing it at the
Indeed.
at the cemetery as well. But we open funerals usually with the psalm, and that's one of the popular ones.
When you do a psalm like that in a service, do you have accompaniment? Are there instruments, or do you have a choir,
I
or?
love that question.
A choir at funerals. We should try that one out.
So I definitely think at funerals, it's pretty low key.
Mhm.
It's usually, if it's in the sanctuary, yes, we could have piano or organ, but we don't have an organ here. But yes, often at funerals that are big enough that they want to be in our sanctuary and not COVID, yes, people can request to have accompaniment. But especially during these times when everything is graveside, the rabbi and I, it's all a cappella.
Well, it's lovely. It's great. Rabbi Wolf, so recently I've been preaching on Psalms. Do your sermons do you ever base a sermon on a psalm?
I think I will quote a psalm sometimes for an idea that it includes. Usually I don't give sermons based entirely on one psalm.
It's unusual for Christians. I've just been the oddball lately.
Well,
We
did
tend
you
to-
just do, Rabbi, this last Shabbos you just preached on a song?
I don't remember what I spoke about this past.
She was
Yeah,
listening. That's
the
good.
national anthem.
Oh yeah, thank you. Good memory on that one.
I listened.
Yeah, so she pointed out we were talking about Psalm, I believe it's 126. Look it up and make sure I'm correct on that.
Okay.
That was considered for the national anthem for the state of Israel before the Hatikvah was chosen, because it reflects a yearning to return to Zion for centuries before there was such a thing as political Zionism. And,
It's a beautiful song.
And so since we celebrated Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's Independence Day last week, I spoke really about Yom HaAtzmaut, but you're right, that I included the...
Is it 126?
We are like those who dream.
There you go, that's the one.
126.
There we go. So it is Psalm 126. When Adonai returned us to Zion, we were like dreamers, our mouths filled with laughter, our tongues with song. And so we focused on that a little bit this past Shabbat. Thank you for reminding me about that.
We're always
Shabbat,
great.
We're ready for next week, not ready for nothing.
Yeah, it
this
was
past
really
week.
beautiful because we learned so much from the rabbi on that, because we know the national anthem is Hatikvah, which means hope. And so to hear that history, that this psalm would have been the Israeli national anthem, was a very beautiful teaching, because we just had Israel Independence Day last Thursday.
Right. Those of us who preach are so grateful when someone is listening and remembers.
Oh, yes.
It's great.
It is nice, isn't it?
Well, one of the great things about Rabbi Wolk that I really enjoy is that he is the son of a cantor, and he actually is an expert in cantorial music. So he's a rabbi who really, really cares about the musical settings of liturgy. And
That's
That's only because I can't sing them myself.
I sing a little. Every now and then I'll break into song during a sermon. Oh my goodness. But yeah. And I think so. Rabbi Ezra, your predecessor, he has a son who became a cantor.
yes.
And his father was also a cantor.
And his father was a cantor. It's a lovely thing. Yeah.
Clergy families tend to stays in families. Well, you can attest to that also.
Yeah, my father was a cantor, and my grandfather was a rabbi, and my great-grandfather was a cantor, and then they all had a million kids, and they were all rabbis and cantors.
It's like a bad gene that keeps coming back generation after generation.
So I have a daughter who's a pastor. I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
My wife's father was a pastor. Her grandfather was a pastor. But it's her side of the family. It's not my genes. It's her genes. I mean, we have horse thieves and things. So.
That's how it was in my family also. It was my mom's lineage that was all the rabbis and cantors. And then my dad married into that. But
Where are you from originally, Sharon?
So I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri, but only because my parents moved there for a job. You know, for a synagogue in St. Louis.
Right. Okay. Anything else on Psalms and Judaism?
One thing you just mentioned before, we talked a lot about the service, and Psalms are worked in throughout this book. You could also get a whole separate book of Psalms in Hebrew and in English. And I think you asked about personal piety and reciting Psalms as individuals. It's not something that's really been part of my personal religious practice, but in more traditional communities, you would see people gathering together in like Tehillim circles. Tehillim is the Hebrew name of the book of Psalms, to say Psalms together for some particular occasion if somebody was sick or if there was something else going on in the world. And it's interesting that, again, in more traditional communities, but probably in more pre-modern times when women didn't play an active role in the synagogue before we could have Shirlessic as our cantor, women turned to Psalms a lot more often because they were prayers that you could say on your own. They weren't part of the set liturgy. You could create your own rituals around them. So Tehillim among women in certain communities are really very, it's their way of connecting with God.
And you'll notice sometimes, that's totally right on, Rabbi, you'll notice sometimes in New York City, I lived in New York for 22 years, and if you're ever riding the subway and you see someone pious that's Jewish, chances are they're reading Tehillim on the subway. So as they're traveling, they're in those Psalms, just focused on Psalms as they travel. So
I love these just occasional encounters with differing pieties. So everybody's been on an airplane, and morning comes, and there are Jews that it is time to pray, and they get in the aisle and they begin to pray. Muslim friends, at certain hours of the day, when it's time, you stop and pray. Christians sometimes are more lackadaisical about all of that. I also love when Hebrew words become English words. And we picked up some of those when you were singing. Hallelujah is famous, of course, but words like Jubilee, there are numbers that are cool. And thank y'all so much for taking the time to share with our folks today. It's been really interesting and inspiring.
Happy to teach your folks as well as ours.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And we're grateful for our friendship with Temple Israel. It means a lot to our church. And to carry on together. Thank you so much.
Amen. It means so much to us too. So thank you so much.
Thank you for coming over today.
All right.
Well, friends, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. That was great. It was really inspiring and interesting. And we're going to stay on Psalms for a while. It's an inexhaustible store. We're going to come back to some of my former colleagues, some of my current colleagues, some of you, talking about what's a favorite psalm? What's the psalm that really speaks to you and why? I've got a nun, Sister Diane Brigant, who's one of America's leading psalm scholars, coming to talk about psalms. She gave a great answer. I said, "What's your favorite psalm?" She said, "All of them." It's a great answer. Anyway, thank you for joining us, and reach out with questions, comments, suggestions, anything. It's great. Thank you so much for being part of our study.